"Jamie, it's me, your dad." The words hung in the air between us, awkward and uncertain, like he was bracing himself for rejection. He stood on my porch in the fading evening light, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, his hand hovering near the doorframe as if he might bolt at any second. I just stared at him. My hand clenched the doorknob so hard I could feel the cold ridges digging into my palm, anchoring me to the moment. 20 years. 2 decades since I'd last heard his voice in person, since the night he left us behind with nothing but unanswered questions, brittle memories, and wounds that never really healed. Now, impossibly, he was back, standing on my porch as though he expected to be welcomed home. "My name is Jamie Gardner. 30 years old, an engineer by trade. My whole existence has revolved around logic, precision, and the comfort of things that make sense. Blueprints, equations, numbers. I've always been good at troubleshooting, at untangling messes and finding solutions. But there was one puzzle I could never crack. Why did my dad walk out when I was 10? The day he left, something fundamental splintered in my family. My mom, Carolina, shouldered the weight of everything, working herself to exhaustion to keep us afloat. My older brother Stan retreated into himself, depression hollowing him out. My little sister Juliet, just a kid, tried to fill the void by growing up too fast, always trying to hold us together. As for me, I learned early to build walls inside myself, to hide the pain and convince myself, over and over, that we didn't need him, that we were better off, that I was better off. But now here he was, the ghost of my childhood, flesh and blood and uncertainty, and I had no idea how to process it. "Why are you here?" I managed, my voice clipped and icy, colder than I'd intended. He winced as if the words had stung. The man in front of me, Paul Gardner, my father, looked so much older than I remembered. His hair had gone almost completely gray, his eyes shadowed and weary. He looked at me with a kind of tentative hope, mixed with shame. He drew a shaky breath, stepping back as though giving himself room to summon the courage to speak. "Jamie, I just want to talk. I want to explain." His hands fluttered in front of him, helpless, searching for something to hold on to. "I know I messed up. I know it's been a long time. But I want to make things right if you'll let me." I pressed myself against the doorframe, arms folded tight across my chest. Make things right. After 20 years. I could barely keep the anger out of my voice. Where were you when Mom was working 2 jobs just so we could eat? When Stan was drowning and nobody could reach him? When Juliet cried herself to sleep, convinced it was somehow her fault you left? He flinched, shoulders collapsing inward. For a heartbeat, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt, regret, maybe even grief. "I never wanted things to get so bad," he whispered, his voice raw. I wasn't in a good place back then. I wish I could explain it better, Jamie." Well, I shot back, "Neither were we. But we didn't get to run away. We had to stay and pick up the pieces." I studied him, this stranger who used to be my father. Memories surged up, sharp-edged and vivid, as if 20 years hadn't dulled them at all. Those last weeks before he left, our house was a powder keg. Tension simmering, arguments erupting over bills, money, the endless grind of trying to keep everything together. My parents' voices would rise and fall behind closed doors, growing sharper, more desperate, until the whole house felt like it was trembling. I remember lying awake at night, heart pounding, listening to the storm of their fights and wishing I could fix it, wishing I could do something to make it stop. My mom would beg him, her voice breaking with exhaustion. "Paul, we're a family. We need to stick together, work through this." And my dad every time would snap back. "Carolina, I can't do this anymore. I'm drowning. I need space." The words cut deeper every time I overheard them. One night he came into my room, his footsteps hesitant. I was brushing my hair, getting ready for bed. He sat on the edge of my bed, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "Hey, kiddo," he said softly, and there was something final in his voice. "I just wanted to say goodbye." "Where are you going?" I asked, not really understanding. "I'll be gone for a while," he said, forcing a smile that was more of a grimace. "But I'll see you soon, okay?" And then he hugged me. Awkward, stiff, the way you hug someone you don't know how to talk to. I believed him. I waited for weeks, then months, then years. He never came back. Life went on without him, but there was always a gap, a missing piece I learned to live around. Now, as I stood in the doorway, I studied the lines in his face, the slump of his shoulders. He looked like a man who'd lost more than he'd ever admit. Part of me burned to slam the door, to send him away for good. But another part, the part that remembered all the nights Stan wouldn't leave his room, the way Juliet clung to Mom, the exhaustion etched into Carolina's face, kept me rooted to the spot, unable to move. "Why now?" I asked, forcing the words out, my voice like ice. He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck the way he always did when he was lost. "Jamie, I know I can't fix what I did. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want to try, just to talk, to see if there's anything left to salvage. I'm not asking for anything else. I just need you to know I'm sorry. I've spent years thinking of what I'd say if I ever saw you again." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my breath. "I can't do this right now," I said, the words scraping my throat. He nodded, defeat written in every line of his body. "Get it? I'll give you time," he said, stepping away. "But I'll come back in a few days. I want to see you again if you'll let me." I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. I just stood there, watching as he walked down the steps and disappeared into the night, swallowed up by the darkness. My legs felt numb, my mind racing in a dozen different directions. When I finally closed the door, I leaned my forehead against the wood, struggling to pull myself together. My hands were shaking. I fumbled for my phone, desperate for something solid, for someone who understood. Called my mom. She picked up almost immediately, her voice sharp with concern. "Jamie, what's wrong?" He showed up, I blurted, the words tumbling out. He was just here." For a long moment, there was silence on the line, heavy and loaded, as if she was searching for the right words. I could hear her breathing, steadying herself the same way she always had to. It struck me then how much the past still lived inside all of us, how one person's choices could echo through decades, shaping who we became and how we learned to trust or not trust, to open up or shut down. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I wanted to let him back in, or if I could ever forgive him for what he did. All I knew was that the foundations I'd built my life on, the walls I'd constructed so carefully, were suddenly shifting, and I had no idea how to hold them together. My mom's voice went from soft to unyielding in a heartbeat. "He came here last week." I froze, the air thickening around me. "Wait, what? Why didn't you say anything?" She breathed out, slow and weary. "Because I knew it would upset you, honey. He said he wanted to talk, to try and reconnect. I told him no. I told him it's too late for that, and I meant it." The word reconnect tasted bitter. "So, then what happened?" My grip on the phone tightened, knuckles white, heart pounding so hard I worried she'd hear. "He left," she whispered, as if the memory itself was fragile. "But Jamie, you have to hear me. You don't owe him a thing. Don't let him worm his way in and make you question yourself. He chose to leave us behind. That's a choice he has to live with, not you." Her words should have comforted me, maybe even reassured me that I was finally safe from the shadow he'd cast over our lives. But instead, it just stirred up an old ache I'd spent years trying to bury. "He said he's coming back in a few days," I admitted, my voice barely audible now, uncertainty creeping in. She exhaled sharply, the sound heavy with worry. "Just promise me you'll be careful, Jamie. He's good at getting in people's heads, turning things around. But you're stronger than you think. Stronger than he ever gave you credit for." I nodded, even though she couldn't see it, her words hanging over me like a storm cloud. I wished I could believe her, but all I felt was a gnawing uncertainty. Was I really strong enough for this? Or was I just pretending, hoping no one would notice how scared I was? The moment we hung up, I pulled up my brother's number. I couldn't shake the anxiety that was settling in my chest, cold and persistent. If Dad found me and Mom, it was only a matter of time before he tracked down Stan or Juliet. None of us were as hidden as we like to believe. Stan answered after a few rings, his voice thick with sleep. Jamie. Man, it's late. What's going on? I tried to sound calm, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. Stan, has Dad been by your place? Has he tried to contact you? There was a pause, tension crackling across the line. Dad. No, why would he wait? Are you saying he's reaching out to you? He was just here, I said, pacing the length of my living room, restless. And Mom said he showed up at her house last week. I'm worried he might come looking for you or Juliet next. Stan let out a breath that sounded almost like a curse. Jesus, Jamie, just hearing his name makes me feel sick. I don't know what I'd say if I saw him. What does he want after all this time? He says he wants to reconnect, I said, the word feeling wrong in my mouth like something I'd outgrown. Stan made a sound halfway between a scoff and a groan. Right. Where was he when we were kids, when everything fell apart? He can't just waltz back in and pretend we're still some happy family. I swallowed hard, the old resentment rising. Before I could say anything else, I hung up and dialed Juliet. She answered almost immediately, her voice bright but cautious. She always was the quickest to pick up on tension. Jamie, what's going on? She asked. Juliet, has Dad tried to reach out to you? Come by, call, anything. She sounded startled, the confidence in her tone faltering. No, he hasn't. Why? Did he come to you? Yes, Mom. I wanted you to be prepared. I don't know what he wants, but I'm worried he's not done. If he tries to show up here, he'll be out the door before he says a word, Juliet said, her voice turning hard. He lost the right to talk to me a long time ago. I have nothing to say to him, and I don't want anything from him. Her words echoed in my mind long after our call ended. I realized as I sat there that none of us were as indifferent as we pretended. Even Juliet's anger was just pain with sharper edges. Dad hadn't reached out to her or Stan yet, but it felt like only a matter of time. And none of us were ready to see his face again. A few days dragged by, each one longer than the last. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach clenched. Finally, Stan's name flashed on the screen. His message was brief. Can we talk? It's about Dad. I braced myself for whatever was coming, dialing his number. He answered so quickly I knew he'd been waiting. Jamie, I know this will sound crazy, he began, his voice unsteady, but I think we should meet him. Just once. All of us, together. A surge of frustration rose in me. Stan, you can't be serious. After everything, after all these years, you want to just sit down and have a chat. That's not going to fix anything. He hesitated, and I heard the familiar pain in his voice. The ache we all carried, no matter how well we hid it. I don't expect it to fix anything. I keep thinking about all the things I never got to say to him. About the questions I still have. I need some kind of closure, Jamie. Don't you? I didn't answer right away. It was easier to bury things, to pretend I didn't care. But Stan's voice, raw with longing and hurt, made it impossible to ignore the truth. We all had wounds that never really healed. Did you talk to Mom? To Juliet? He sighed. I did. Mom said she's done with all of it. Juliet said she wants nothing to do with him. But I'm not sure I can do this alone. Please, Jamie. Just one time. If it's as bad as we think, we never have to see him again. For a moment, I let myself imagine it. The four of us facing the man who'd left us behind. Would it give us the answers we needed, or just open up old scars? I wasn't sure, but I couldn't ignore Stan's request. Let me think about it, I said quietly, the words heavy on my tongue. I'll call you back. Okay, he said, hope and fear mingling in his voice. Thank you. After we hung up, I sat in the silence, my mind spinning. Did I owe Stan this? Was it fair to let Dad in, even for a moment after everything he'd done? Or was it just another way for him to hurt us, to remind us of everything we'd lost? A few nights later, we all gathered at Mom's house. The old living room, once the center of our family life, felt different now. smaller, tenser, the air thick with memories and things left unsaid. Mom sat in her armchair, her back straight and her gaze steady, as if daring anyone to challenge her resolve. Juliet sprawled on the couch, arms folded, her jaw set in defiance. Stan paced the rug, restless energy radiating from him, hope and dread warring in his eyes. I hovered at the edge of the love seat, uncertain, my mind torn between wanting answers and wanting to run. Stan finally broke the silence, his voice trembling but determined. Look, I know this is a lot, but I really believe we should see him. Just one meeting. We don't have to forgive him. We just have to face him. Mom shook her head, her mouth set in a thin line. Stan, I understand why you want this, but I can't. I made my peace with your father's choices a long time ago. I don't need to invite that pain back into my life. I'm not angry anymore, I'm just done. Juliet glared at Stan, her eyes flashing. She's right. He made his decision. He chose to walk away. He doesn't deserve a second chance, not after everything he put us through. I don't care what he has to say. Stan straightened, looking from one of us to the other, desperation flickering in his expression. I need to know. If I don't see him now, I'll always wonder what could have been said. Maybe it won't change anything, but maybe it'll help me move on. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I just don't want to face him alone. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The room was heavy with things we'd never said, old wounds that had never truly healed. I realized that, even after all these years, Dad still had a hold on all of us, if only in the questions he'd left behind. I need to know, Juliet. I need it like air. Why did he leave? Why did he decide we weren't worth staying for, like we were something he could just step away from without looking back? Maybe it doesn't matter to you, maybe you've already made your peace with it, but I can't. I need to hear it from him. Even if it's just another one of his stories, even if it's just a lie I can see through. My mom let out a long sigh, brushing a stray hair behind her ear, her features softening as she looked at me. Stan, I understand. Really do. You want answers, and that's fair. But sometimes the ones we want answers from are the least likely to tell us the truth. People like your father, they rewrite things to suit themselves. Just don't go thinking you'll get what you want. I looked over at Juliet. Her eyes were cold, unreadable, her jaw set. I'm not going, she said, her tone flat, final, like she'd hammered a nail into the conversation. Honestly, I don't think either of you should. But if you're set on this, don't come crying to me after. I warned you. Stan turned to me, his eyes wide and earnest, almost pleading. It was rare for him to let his guard down like that. Jamie, I can't do this alone. Will you come with me? I don't want to face him by myself. I hesitated, the kitchen suddenly feeling too small, my mother's worried gaze burning between my shoulder blades. Part of me wanted to say no, to refuse to be pulled into the orbit of my father's mistakes again. But Stan looked so desperate, so much like the little boy I remembered from years ago, that I couldn't bring myself to turn away. I nodded, my voice coming out quieter than I intended. Yeah, we'll go. But only to make sure he doesn't try anything. We go, we listen, and if he starts in with the old games, we walk. No second chances. Deal? Stan nodded, looking like he'd been holding his breath for years and was finally letting it out. My mom's voice was gentle but edged with something unyielding. Be careful, both of you. Your dad, he's clever. He knows how to twist things, make you doubt yourself. Don't let him get in your heads. Juliet just shook her head, a mixture of anger and resignation on her face. She didn't say another word. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. I couldn't tell if we were making a huge mistake, but one thing was clear. Nothing about this was going to be simple or painless. That night after dinner, I tried to busy myself with chores, scrubbing the kitchen counters more vigorously than usual, as if I could wipe away the tension in the house. I was just finishing up when I heard a knock at the door, sharp and hesitant. My heart leapt into my throat. I opened it to find my dad standing there, the years weighing on his hunched shoulders. He looked smaller than I remembered, almost as if he was bracing himself for rejection. "Jamie," he said, his voice almost a whisper, his eyes searching my face for some sign of welcome. "I know I shouldn't have come again, but I need to talk. Please, just one chance. That's all I'm asking." I crossed my arms, leaning in the doorway, trying not to let my frustration show. "You can't just keep showing up whenever you want," I said. "But fine. We'll meet. Saturday afternoon, Brookside Park, 2 o'clock. Me and Stan. That's it. Mom and Juliet aren't coming." He blinked, caught off guard, but nodded quickly. "Okay. That's fine. I'll be there. Thank you." I held his gaze for a moment, searching for any trace of sincerity, then stepped back. "Just so we're clear, this isn't a reunion. We'll listen, but that's all. No promises." His voice broke a little as he replied, "Thank you. I mean it." I nodded, then closed the door, leaving him on the porch. The quiet in the house felt sharper than before, like every emotion was amplified. I stood there for a long time, absorbing the weight of what I'd just agreed to. I didn't know if I wanted an explanation or an apology, if I even believed either was possible. Maybe I was just doing it for Stan, or maybe I needed closure myself, something to finally fill in the blank space where my father should have been. The days crawled by, each hour stretching longer than the last. I tried to fill the time, rearranging my bookshelves, cleaning rooms that didn't need cleaning, throwing myself into work. But no matter how I tried to distract myself, my thoughts kept circling back to the meeting. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach twisted. I half expected it to be Dad backing out, or Stan telling me he'd changed his mind. But it was always something mundane. A reminder about a work deadline, a notification about a grocery sale. The only message from Stan was a simple, "Still on for Saturday?" By Friday night I was restless, sitting on the couch, phone in hand, staring at the ceiling. I thought about calling Stan, telling him I couldn't go through with it. But I knew I wouldn't. I'd made a promise, to Stan, to myself, that I'd see this through, no matter how much it hurt. There was no running from it now. Saturday morning arrived, gray and cold. I woke up before the alarm, unable to sleep. I spent the morning pacing the living room, drinking cup after cup of coffee, rehearsing what I might say. I thought about all the things I'd wanted to ask my father over the years, all the things I'd never had the chance to say. But now, with the meeting looming, every word felt inadequate. At 1:15 I parked in front of Stan's place. He was already outside, pacing the sidewalk, hands jammed in his jacket pockets, his breath visible in the chill air. When he saw my car, he got in without a word. "Hey," he said, voice tight. "Hey." I glanced at him, trying to read his face as I pulled away from the curb. "You ready for this?" He let out a shaky laugh. "Not even a little. But I guess that's the whole point, isn't it? You can't really prepare for something like this." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, feeling the tension in both of us. "Want to grab a coffee first? We've got some time." He nodded, maybe a little too quickly, grateful for the delay. "Yeah, that'd be good." We pulled into the coffee shop drive-thru. The car was thick with silence as we waited, the air heavy with everything we weren't saying. After a minute I asked, "What's running through your head?" He stared out the window, watching cars go by. "I'm scared, Jamie. Not just of what he'll say, but of how it'll make me feel. What if I leave feeling worse than before? What if none of it helps?" I handed him his coffee as we got back on the road. "I've been thinking the same thing all week," I admitted. "But we're doing this together, Stan. No matter what happens, we've got each other's backs. If it gets bad, we walk away. No looking back. We don't let him tear us down again." He nodded, clutching his coffee like it was a lifeline. For a moment, we just sat there in the quiet, the city passing by outside the windows, both of us bracing ourselves for what was coming. I realized then that maybe it wasn't just answers we were after. Maybe it was the chance to face the person who'd left us behind, to show him that we weren't the same kids he'd abandoned. Maybe closure wasn't about getting the perfect explanation or apology. It was about finally standing our ground together. As we neared the park, the minutes seemed to speed up. I pulled into the lot, heart pounding, hands trembling just a little. Stan looked over at me, eyes wide but determined. "No matter what happens," he said. "Thanks for being here." I managed a small smile. "We're in this together. Let's get it over with." We got out of the car, the wind cold against our faces. Somewhere ahead, my father was waiting, the past and everything we'd never said caught between us. For the first time, I didn't feel like a scared kid. I felt like someone who deserved to be heard. We walked toward the meeting place, side by side, and I knew, whatever happened next, we'd face it together. He nodded, gripping the cup so tightly his knuckles went white, like it was the only anchor he had left in the world. Agreed. As we drew nearer to the park, my heart pounded, not just from nerves, but from the storm of old memories swirling in my chest. This wasn't only about seeing our dad after all these years. It was about finally facing the tangled wreckage he'd left behind and the parts of ourselves we'd been forced to rebuild in his absence. We spotted him instantly. He sat hunched on a weathered bench by the pond. His hands twisted together in his lap, eyes fixed on the water as if it might offer some kind of answer. The moment he saw us approaching, he looked up, and for a second, he seemed almost startled, unsure if he should smile or brace himself. In the end, he managed a hesitant, fragile smile that barely touched his eyes. Stan and I exchanged a glance, 1,000 unspoken words between us, then quietly sat down across from him. The space between us felt charged, thick with the weight of everything that had gone unsaid, years of silence pressing down until it was almost suffocating. That heavy, awkward silence stretched, practically begging to be broken, but none of us could find the courage to go first. At last, my dad cleared his throat, the sound brittle. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice low, edged with something that could have been hope or fear. "I wasn't sure if you would." Stan leaned forward, elbows digging into his knees, jaw set. "We almost didn't," he shot back, voice sharp with old wounds that hadn't healed. "So here we are. What do you want, Dad?" He almost choked on the word dad. Like it was foreign, like he wasn't sure if it belonged to this man anymore. Dad flinched, shrinking into himself. "I don't want anything except a chance to explain," he said, his fingers twitching nervously. "I know I hurt you both. I know I let you down in ways I can't ever take back. But I want you to believe, it wasn't because I didn't love you." I shook my head, jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. "Then what was it?" I forced out, my voice cold. "Because from where I'm sitting, it sure felt like you didn't." He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw the full weight of regret in his eyes. Dark circles, lines etched deep from too many sleepless nights. "I was drowning, Jamie," he said softly. "I felt like I was failing at everything. My job, being a husband, being your father. Every day it felt like I was dragging you all down with me. I thought if I left, you'd all be better off. That I was the problem holding you back." Stan cut in, his voice breaking, raw with the truth he'd carried for too long. "Better," he spat. "You think leaving us with nothing, forcing Mom to work herself into the ground just to keep us fed, was better? Do you have any idea what you did to us? To her?" Dad's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him. He stared at his trembling hands. "I know it doesn't make sense. I was selfish. I thought staying away was the only way I could help. I see now how wrong I was, how much pain I caused. A favor." My voice cracked, the words tumbling out in a mix of anger and heartbreak. "Mom couldn't pay the rent. Stan needed therapy. Juliet cried herself to sleep every night for months. That was your idea of helping us." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "I was wrong," he whispered. "I've been wrong every day since. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know I don't have that right. I just needed you to hear me say I'm sorry." Stan let out a laugh, bitter and hollow. He leaned back, staring at the sky like he wanted to escape. "Sorry doesn't fix anything," he said. "Sorry doesn't make up for 20 years of nothing but questions and emptiness." A lump rose in my throat. The anger I'd tried to bury twisted together with the grief I'd never really faced. "You know what's hardest," I said, my voice shaking. "We didn't get a choice. You got to leave. We had to stay and pick up the pieces. Deal with everything you couldn't handle. And now you want to come back like showing up is some kind of redemption. But it's not." Dad nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks, silent and unstoppable. "I know," he said, voice breaking. "But I couldn't keep going without trying to tell you. I've thought about you every single day. Wondered what you were doing, who you were becoming. I missed all of it." Stan shot to his feet, voice trembling with rage and sorrow. "Well, we didn't have the luxury of just thinking about you," he snapped. "We had to live it, Dad. Every day. We had to become adults before we were ready, because you left." I stayed where I was, fists clenched in my lap, staring at the man who'd shaped so much of my life by his absence. The silence between us grew, heavy with the ghosts of lost birthdays, graduations, moments we'd had to celebrate alone. All the things we'd never said hung in the air, impossible to gather up or explain. The conversation kept spinning, circling the same pain. Dad apologized over and over, each sorry more desperate than the last, as if repeating it might somehow undo the past. Stan fired back every wound, every memory of struggle and disappointment. I felt myself splintering, the old scars splitting open with every word. Eventually I broke in. "What do you actually expect from us?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "You think an apology can erase everything? We survived 20 years without you. We figured it out piece by piece. We don't need you now." Dad's face crumpled, but I pressed on. "You weren't there when we needed you most. Not for Mom, not for Stan, not for Juliet, not for me. And now you show up, hoping it'll be different. But it's just too late." Stan let out a shaky breath, looking over at me. In his eyes, I saw the same storm of anger, sadness, and something close to acceptance. He nodded, almost imperceptibly, and in that moment we both understood. This was the end of something. Our lives had moved forward, with or without him. Nothing he could say would change the course we'd taken. "Dad," Stan said, voice quieter but resolute. "I thought maybe meeting you would give me closure. But the truth is, I don't need anything from you anymore. We closed that chapter, whether you were ready or not." I looked at Dad, and for the first time, I saw not the man who'd abandoned us, but someone who was just as lost as we had been. He seemed smaller, diminished, shoulders hunched and hands shaking. "I don't hate you," I said, surprising even myself. "But there's no room for you in our lives anymore. I'm sorry, but we can't go back." He opened his mouth, but no words came. For a moment, it seemed like he might try again, but then the fight left him. After a long, aching silence, he just nodded, eyes cast down to the ground. "I understand," he whispered. Stan stood, and for a moment I thought about everything we'd lost, everything we'd learned to live without. There were no more words left to say, only the ache of what could never be repaired. We turned and walked away, the past heavy behind us, but the future our own. I didn't say anything. I just fell in step beside him, letting the gravity of the moment pull us along. We turned away from the bench, leaving him behind, alone in the fading afternoon light. The walk to the car felt longer than before, every footstep echoing the things we didn't say. As we pulled onto the road for the drive back to Stan's place, a heavy silence settled over us. Not just the absence of words, but a dense, almost palpable stillness. It was the kind of silence that wraps around you, makes you aware of your own heartbeat, and presses down on any urge to speak. The radio stayed off. The only sound came from the low, steady hum of the engine and the occasional whisper of tires on asphalt. I kept my eyes fixed on the road, letting the lines blur past, while beside me, Stan gazed out his window, his reflection flickering in the glass. I glanced over at him once, catching the faraway look in his eyes. I wondered what memories were running through his mind, what feelings he was wrestling with, but I didn't ask. The truth was, I didn't have the words, and maybe he didn't either. Sometimes silence is the only language that makes sense. I figured we both needed this. Some distance from what had just happened, a little breathing room to let the reality of it all sink in. There was so much that lingered between us, but for now, no one tried to bridge the gap. When we finally reached his apartment, I pulled into the familiar spot outside. For a moment, neither of us moved. Stan looked down at his hands, then out the window again, as if searching for something he'd left behind. Eventually, he turned to me and spoke. His voice rough, carrying the weight of everything left unsaid. "Thanks for coming with me," he managed. His words slow and careful, like they'd cost him something. "I don't think I could have done that alone." I nodded, trying to offer some reassurance, though my own voice sounded distant. "We did what we could. Now we move on." It was a simple answer, but it was all I had left to give. He hesitated for a moment, as if wanting to say more, but then just nodded back. He opened the door and stepped out, pausing before he closed it. "Take care of yourself, Jamie," he said, meeting my eyes for the briefest moment. There was something in his look, a mixture of gratitude, sadness, and maybe even relief, before he turned and disappeared into the stairwell. As I drove home, the quiet still filled the car, but it had changed. The heaviness from before had lifted, replaced by something gentler, easier to bear. It felt like a chapter had closed, or at least a page had turned. Facing our past hadn't brought the closure I'd hoped for, but it had shifted something inside us, made space for whatever came next. Maybe the pain would fade. Maybe it wouldn't. But at least we weren't running from it anymore. That seemed like enough for now. If you found yourself drawn into this story, I hope you'll consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means a lot and ensures you won't miss out on any of the stories we share here. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and until next time, take care.